This video is brought to you by Squarespace. For as long as I've been doing parkour, the name Anan Anwar has always carried with it a bit of a legend. Like sure, he's always been known for his very creative approach to parkour, the way he helped pioneer parkour fashion through Team Farang, but there is one thing that makes Anan Anwar's story stand out from anyone else in the world of parkour. And that is that he grew up as a child superstar in Thailand. Like, when I say superstar, I'm not exaggerating. From a young age, he was starring in films, television shows. He had 4 studio albums. He was effectively the equivalent of like a Disney child star. However, after a strange life of many twists and turns, Anan found himself as a figurehead in the world of parkour. In today's video, we will explore the extraordinary story of Anan Anwar. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I do loads of deep dives into the weird world of parkour and kind of just document stuff I'm interested in. Growing up in Thailand, Anan was a natural-born performer. For as long as he could remember, he was always acting, singing, and dancing. He was the type of kid that was always playing the main character in any school play. Now, Anan had an older brother called Johnny. Whilst most older brothers were busy putting you in headlocks, farting in your face, Johnny was keeping himself busy by being one part of a Thai pop duo called Raptor. Raptor out in Thailand were massive in the 90s. They were like a teen pop group. The equivalent over here might be Boyzone or something like that. They were selling millions of records and performing to massive live audiences. And it was at one of these live shows that young Anan would go and watch his big brother perform. And as time passed, one of the executives for the label that Raptor was signed to, they saw how big of a success Johnny was and they wondered if it ran in the genes. So around about the age of 11 or 12, Anan was invited to do some vocal tests, as well as film tests and dancing, just to kind of see if he had any talent. And pretty quickly, these executives realized that Anan was pretty much the whole package. So they decided to take a chance on Anan Anwar. Instantly, he was a massive hit. At the age of 12, they released a self-titled album called Anan Anwar, which was released in 1999. This thing was massive out in Thailand, and instantly he became a star. And for the next few years, Anan would continue to drop bangers like Ding Dong, Dada, and many more. Each of these videos would be complete with a music video and a choreographed dance routine. Little Anan, with his cute charm, his catchy choruses, and memorable dance-alongs, turned Anan into a child superstar. Everywhere he would go, he would be recognized. At such a young age, this little kid was propelled into stardom, and the labels realized how much people loved him, so they pushed him into films and television. And before he really knew it, Anan had become a child megastar, sort of like Miley Cyrus or something like that, just with shorter hair. I couldn't imagine from 12 years old being thrown into stardom, where everyone knows you. Everywhere you go, you're recognized, and people would elevate him and treat him different because he was a celebrity. And it got me wondering, how did this affect his mentality? Time and time again, we hear stories of child stars and how fame just ruins them.
I give my family the most credit for this. I never let it get to my head. The fame, all that, it's not real. It's very easy to let you hang your ego on that and say, this is who I am. My family are very good at not letting me let that get to my head. Your history doesn't make you who you are. What you do makes you. So I never wanted my history with stuff to tell me who I was, because
wow, what a mature attitude for a kid, man. What?
As a late teenager, I was that, but that doesn't make me who I am. What I do in every moment makes me who I am.
As time would pass and Anan grew into a teenager, he would very fortunately rely on the mentalities and the attitudes that his parents had instilled into him. His parents made it very clear to him that fame was just fame, and that Anan is just Anan, a young lad. And despite all the adoration and the success, fame can be fleeting. This lesson of almost disattachment from an ego would be something that would become very important throughout the rest of Anan's life. Before we go any further with the video, I want to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're running a business or a personal brand, having a good website is one of the most important things. It doesn't matter how good the product is, if your website looks janky, people just won't trust it and they won't buy from you. But thankfully, Squarespace makes building a website so easy. It's always been my go-to whenever I've had to build websites in the past. Not only is there endless, customizable, high-quality templates to pick from, but there's also a ton of other features that can really help out your brand. With Squarespace, you can do things like making members only content. I can imagine this to be perfect if you're like a coach or a PT and you want to provide like extra tutorials for your customers. There's loads more features on top of that, so definitely go check out squarespace.com to start your free trial. And you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain by using the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video. Anan never got too attached to just one thing. If a new interest came along in his life, he would just explore it. See where it takes him. Regardless if it was going to be some elaborate career, he just did things as he found them interesting. Anan would pick up new interests and excel in them very quickly. Around about 1999, Anan competed in the Junior X Games in Phuket, where he was doing aggressive inline skating. Shortly after that, he got into wakeboarding and ended up competing at a national level in wakeboarding. Anan would just pick something up, dive deep into it, and become pretty amazing at them. And it wasn't even just sports, it was video games as well. Counter-Strike, Dota. I think this pattern of Anan finding a new interest, getting amazing at it, and then moving on to the next one has something to do with that value that his parents taught him.
I think it's come quite naturally because that whole part what we were saying about self-identifying as one thing. And when you do that, it can be very powerful for you in terms of continue to progress in that one thing. But it's also very dangerous in that if you lose that one thing, you are shattered. You know, but if your identity has always been the value you give yourself in terms of being a competent human being, that's what I like to be. I want to be a competent human being. So I want to be tied to not just one thing, but a bunch of things. And then that allows you to be more flexible and adaptive whenever the time comes that you have to be.
So often in life, people grow attached to the things that they're good at. And because they're good at them, they wrap their whole identity around it. And as time passes and things change, some people can find it very hard to accept that they're no longer the person they once were, and that they might not even like the thing that they used to love. Anyway, as Anan grew into an older teenager, 17 or 18, he started to realize that his days of being a superstar were kind of coming to an end.
That's probably why I didn't stick to it, because I didn't feel like the musician. So I was a performer. I could sing, I could dance, I would enjoy the performing aspect, but I wasn't living and breathing making music. It wasn't stimulating in terms of personal growth. I'm 19 years old. I've done 4 studio albums. I've done 3 soap operas and a movie. And they're saying, you want to come back and do another one? And I'm like, I'm bored and I just finished high school. I'm going to go to uni.
It surprised me you'd go to uni because I'm assuming, you're probably making decent enough money.
It's okay money. It's good. It's not bad money. It's not great. It's not like superstardom in the US, but it's money's money, a career's career. But it wasn't my highest priority. And like I said, it's like I'm from a well-to-do family and it's just what you do. You finish high school, you go to uni. Again, I didn't feel like a musician, and I wasn't under any illusion that these things last forever. Most people get 2-3 years. If you're lucky, you get a good decade. And if you're a legend, you get a life, but the odds are against you. At 17, 18, you're kind of tired of the pop dance routine by now. I finished high school. I'm like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to uni. Maybe we'll do something and come back.
And so Anan decided he was going to go to Australia to get a bachelor's degree in film and media in Sydney, UNSW. He wanted a brand new experience that was unlike anything he had done before.
If you've gone from being a superstar in Thailand to, I'm going to guess, and I might be completely wrong, but in Sydney, you wouldn't be as well known.
Not at all. And that was the fun part, getting to reinvent myself, start from scratch, build myself up. It's the new game.
This whole journey for Anan was for him to explore something completely new. And one day when he was walking around, he noticed some people doing something he hadn't seen in person before. A big group of scruffy looking teenagers hurling themselves at concrete walls. It was at this moment that Anan discovered parkour. With little hesitation, Anan just dived into the world of parkour. He was training every day, he was meeting the whole Sydney parkour community, and he was developing his newfound parkour skills. And like everyone does, he was filming himself on a crappy camcorder and posting videos of his training progressions to YouTube. And as Anan was starting to post his videos, something very bizarre started to happen.
This was, remember, 2006. YouTube's brand new, but people started training and sharing video vlogs on the forums. So we did the same. And then YouTube started uploading to YouTube. And then someone found under one of our training videos, that looks like Anan, but it's a kid. And that's how they found out that I was a singer.
You didn't tell anyone?
I didn't tell anyone. Why would I? It doesn't come up. You go to school, you meet people to do parkour, you do parkour, you go home.
You just failed to mention you were a superstar.
I mean, I'm going to be totally honest. If I was a young lad at university, probably trying to meet a girl or something, I would definitely mention the fact that I used to be a child star.
Tell you what, man, picking up girls in Australia, it's so fucking hard for a guy who, I come from a culture where it's very passive and very apologetic. Sorry to bother you, but also when I was very famous here, it was very easy. I didn't have to learn how to introduce myself because that wasn't a thing I needed to do before.
It seemed as though Anan just wanted to be a normal, regular person and experience regular life that regular people would live. And going to university in Sydney gave him this opportunity. No one knew that he grew up as some kind of superstar, they just saw him as Anan, the guy with the long hair who does flips. This gave Anan an opportunity to really find himself. Not the star that the media portrayed him as, but who he really was.
And me and Sean just missed our bus.
So as Anan was having a great time, learning these new parkour skills, having incredible experiences, his grades at university kind of took a back seat.
And did you get your degree?
Nope.
That's 2.5 years. You were so close.
Yeah, I know. So here's the story. Doing okay, getting okay grades. Doesn't help that all I'm doing is playing parkour every day, playing video games every night. So I'm barely getting by. It's not looking good. But then 1 year, it got low enough that I got suspended. And the reason I got suspended was because I was doing parkour and I knocked myself out and gave myself a subdural hematoma. So I peeled off from about 3 meters, hit my head on the concrete, lights out. Came around a few minutes later, I went to the hospital. I had subdural hematoma, which is light bruising to the brain. I'll tell you, man, that was the roughest 2 weeks. When you have a bruise on the brain, it does not feel good. Those 2 weeks just happened to be exam weeks. Needless to say, I didn't go to any of my exams. And immediately after that is like the Christmas break. So I fly home. I want to go home and then recover. So the letters came through. Hey, you missed all your exams. You're suspended. And I could have appealed and said, I have a good reason. I was in hospital or whatever. But I just ended up saying, you know what? Let's just take a break. I'm home now. I can always go back.
In 2008, as Anan was recovering from his brain injury, the new friends he had made from the Sydney parkour community decided that they would come and visit him in Thailand. It started out with the OG parkour legend Sean Wood, but over time, more and more people would come.
Every summer, people would just keep coming back. First, it was just a few people, 2008, 2009, 2010, more and more people came. Oh, fuck me.
Oh, beautiful.
1 month of every summer, people would just fly into Thailand, and everyone. I had my own place, my own condo with some spare bedrooms, and I just have a bunch of freerunners here for like 4 to 6 weeks of the summer.
For Anan, these were memorable, nostalgic times. Between the years of like 2008 to 2010, we were deep into the parkour golden era. The sport was at its height of popularity. Swarms of these nomadic freerunners from all across the world would make a pilgrimage every year to Thailand to experience this bubbling city of historic architecture and exciting culture. And as these armies of often European people would come over to Thailand, there was a word that started to float around amongst the Thai locals to describe these freerunners. And that word was Farang. Farang is a Thai word to say foreigner, often said with a pretty negative connotation. But this word was taken by these freerunners and worn as a badge of honor. Farang pretty much became the name for this group, and every year they would come to Thailand for the Farang tour. Videos of these trips started to pop up on YouTube, usually with the word Farang in the title. And it was in 2009 where a man called Jason Paul would arrive knocking on Anan's door.
I've never met Jason, but Jason was the first person to show up at my house that summer with nothing but a camera and 1 pair of underwear. That's who Jason was, by the way. That's the kind of person. I guess that's what you get when you have an open invitation for people to just come by.
Does Emily know this part of Jason's past?
Hi, I'm Jason. I heard clothing was cheap here. You didn't bring any clothing. 1 camera and a change of underwear and the trackies he was wearing. That was his.
That's amazing.
And he was coming for a month. It was It was ridiculous.
That's
It
amazing.
wasn't long after that trip where we would see the first Farang video appear on Sean Wood's YouTube channel. This video was titled Team Farang Thailand Parkour Tour 2010. And the reception to this video was crazy. The whole parkour world instantly fell in love with Team Farang. It was at this point where Anan, Jason and Sean knew that they were onto something.
So there's a Team Farang 2010 on Sean Wood's channel. That one was, oh shit, people are serious about us. Okay. So next year, this is back when you can wait a year to do the next big thing. Fuck. But it wasn't until 2011 where we said, all right, let's take this seriously. Let's start a new channel, Team Farang. And that's when we made the first one on our new channel, 2011, the city video.
This video was an iconic moment in the world of parkour. I'm pretty sure I just got into parkour that year and I remember this thing coming out. It was unlike most of the content that came before it in the world of parkour. The city showed the personalities and the lifestyle of being a freerunner. A life full of adventures, challenges and friendship. And I mean, sure, there were some videos that showed parkour lifestyle before it, but none that had the same impact as the city. With these stunning skyline shots of Thailand and interviews telling the story of this tour. This video was really the beginning of something very big.
Injecting steroids into the culture, seeing the sport in a new way. Because before now, it's just people doing jumps, but you don't really learn anything about, coming from a performing, same thing, coming from a film and drama and performing arts background. I can see that sport is great, but people really get excited about culture in terms of knowing the characters. Who are the people? What do they care about? What are their values?
In the years that followed, Farang grew into something massive. It very quickly became one of the biggest parkour brands on earth. And they brought with them a new attitude to style and culture. And one of the main ways they did that was through fashion. At this time, parkour was still very much in its formative years, and very little had really been done in terms of culture. And this is where Anan and Team Farang would excel. For Anan, this was something very new. By this time, he's in his early 20s, and he has competed in and excelled in extreme sports prior. And not only that, of course, he was singing, he was dancing, he just studied filmmaking for 2.5 years. Anan was not known as someone who stays doing something for very long, but for some reason, parkour presented something completely new for Anan. The uncharted territory of parkour offered Anan a vessel in which he could dive deep into his interests. And this was way more than just simply jumping on walls and doing parkour. To him, it offered, of course, athleticism, but on top of that, it offered him an opportunity to dive into business, philosophy, art, all of these different areas of his personality wrapped into one thing, the world of parkour. Shortly after the city, Farang would continue to drop more and more videos. These videos would be iconic, game-changing moments in the sport. And Farang would really start to push clothing.
It's 2013, 2014, and no one has done we're doing the bare minimum. We're just printing logos on out of the packet tees. And so me, Jason, Sean, and by this point, Pasha, we just went, fuck it, let's go. We just went all in and just did a massive, like 12 different styles and everything from jackets to jeans, harem pants. We just went all in on fashion.
I would say Farang was one of the first brands to do parkour clothing seriously. They had this whole aesthetic and look, and they released this full clothing line of cut and sew garments. So there Anan was, living as a pro freerunner, or at least trying to. A pro freerunner and brand owner in a sport whose industry was literally being built with every item of clothing they sold. From here, Farang would continue to grow as one of the biggest brands in parkour, with an incredible catalogue of videos and a roster of some of the best freerunners on earth. And all the while, Anan was still pushing his own parkour, developing this kind of experimental and creative style, and became a world-renowned athlete in his own regard. And it seems as though his background in performance helped him develop this kind of viewer-first approach to parkour. His parkour lines were crafted in the same way that you might craft a dance. There would be these surprise moments, elements of contrast, and a feeling of rhythm. However, as time passed, Anan's life took another pretty unexpected turn.
There was no switch, but every year I did less and less on the front end and tried to do more and more on the back, taking more responsibility for the back end. Well, I've always been interested on the back end at some point, just because take my interest in film. I was always the actor in front of the camera. That experience there made me fall in love with what's happening behind the camera. That's how I got into being interested in making films. And it was the same for parkour. It was like, all right, we want to make a brand. How does a brand work? You want to start a business? We want to be entrepreneurs? Oh, what is it like to be an entrepreneur? You know, it happened slowly. I've always been analytical by nature. I've always wondered how the cogs fit together. And it was always, I just like to gamify every aspect of it. So, you know, I'm still in videos, every once in a while, I with the gang doing stuff. So it doesn't feel like I've done a complete 180, but also my priorities have changed and I'm getting old. Shit hurts, man. I don't want to be in front of the camera anymore. You know how much stress it is trying to do shit next to Dom? It's so...
I honestly find it so surprising how Anan is completely unattached from what people expect of him, and maybe even what he probably expects of himself. He's somehow been able to create this completely present mindset where he's so in touch with his natural interest and passion, and he'll just follow that as it arises, and he won't try and force anything. To me, this is such an inspiring attitude, and it's truly freeing. It can be the hardest thing in life to let go of things, or friends, or partners. Being able to be honest and realize that something is no longer right for you is a scary thing to do. We fear so much of the unknown and what we can't control, because letting go of the things that you think make you you is a massive risk. There's a quote I heard recently from Jordan Peterson that, to me, explains this dilemma perfectly.
What do you say to those viewers that don't pursue their dreams and are locked in their careers because they are too afraid to take risks and pursue something meaningful?
Well, the first thing I would say is, well, you should be afraid of taking risks and pursuing something meaningful. But you should be more afraid of staying where you are if it's making you miserable.
I'm honestly amazed by just how well adjusted Anan seems to be. He didn't ever go through the typical dark patch that most child stars do. I mean, he did get a DUI once. And it was plastered all across the tabloids because he drank 3 beers and volunteered to drive a car because the actual driver was already really drunk. And then years later in 2017, it came to bite him in the arse.
So I started the year off strong by getting cut out of a commercial.
He was supposed to appear in this advert for a car. Not as Anan Anwar, but just as like a miscellaneous freerunner. You couldn't even see his face. The car company caught wind that he had had a DUI and decided to manually cut him out of every single frame of the commercial. Tangent aside, I mean, I had to tell you that story because it's ridiculous. But it's just pretty amazing that he never fell into the trappings of fame.
How does fame treat you now?
Yeah, how do I compare it to? Who's an old 90s washed up boy band person that you remember? I'm an Aaron Carter.
Is that him? Yeah, Aaron Carter.
I'm still recognized, but I don't do anything.
Kevin Hart calls that click famous.
Yes.
Oh, you're what's his name?
You are you're snap finger famous. That's the guy. What's the guy that's on
that all day.
To this day, Anan never gave up on parkour. He's still training, he's still pushing Farang, taking it in exciting new avenues, bringing in new freerunners and making more clothing. And he's happily dating his girlfriend, who is also a celebrity. She appeared in one of those model TV shows. It was called The Face Thailand. And all in all, Anan seems to have created a pretty great life for himself. The Parkour bucket list is out now, so head over to jimmythegiant.co.uk and you can help me by picking up some merch, supporting me on Patreon, or using the sponsor link below. Peace.